Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video we are continuing our look with Dissension, and we're going to look at Rakdos Bloodsport, which is the red-black guild from Ravnica. So let's look at the deck list. So we have 21 creatures, 7 instants, 6 enchantments, 2 artifacts, 24 land, mana curve off to the side there. Let's start looking at this one. So, the Rakdos. Kind of a cool guild. I actually like them. They're kind of they're the entertainers of Ravnica, but also mixed with like a death cult. So so they're pretty fun. So in this first outing, their guild keyword is hellbent, which is quite controversial. So let's talk about hellbent. So hellbent is basically your cards basically get an increased effect if you have no cards in hand, and this is I don't think a great mechanic personally, just because it pushes you towards a game state you don't really want to be in, which is like, essentially just top decking. And like I get it kind of matches the flavor of Rakdos. They kind of like live in the moment, not really planning too far ahead, I suppose, kind of being kind of reckless and kind of having little regard for their own life. But having that transfer to play, I think, is not great, because mostly because the Hellbent cards are usually costed, I think, as if it's assuming you always have Hellbent on. And if you don't, they're kind of undercosted or overcosted, if that makes sense. So an example, let's say this. So Demon's Jester. So 2 of these. So it's 4 mana for a 2/2 flyer, which is overcosted, because expect Windrake stats would be this to be 3 mana for a 2/2 flyer. But it's Hellbent, so if you have no cards in hand, it has +2/+1, so it becomes a 4/3 flyer if you have no cards in hand, and that's okay. For getting a 4/3 flyer for only 4 mana with no real drawback is obviously pretty good. But obviously you have to have no cards in hand, and like that is such a not an ideal state to be in, because then you're just top decking. You have no combat tricks in your hand, anything like that. Your opponent doesn't have to really worry about you playing anything instant speed because you've got no hand. Yeah, just I've got some ideas of how Hellbent could have maybe been implemented differently. But I don't think that's really the focus of the video. We should be talking about just the deck itself. So Demon's Jester is kind of okay, I suppose. We have 3 Gobhobbler Rats, 1 black, 1 red for a 2/2, and it has Hellbent. When you have no cards in hand, it has +1/+0, and it has regeneration for 1 black, which is again okay. But without that, it's just a 2/2 for 2. That's hard to cast because it's 2 different colors of mana. Yeah. That's what I'm going to be saying a lot of these cards. I think yeah. They're underwhelming when you don't have Hellbent, and even with some of them when you do have Hellbent, it's just like it's such a small. Like this would have been fine at 1 black and 1 red for a 3/2 with regeneration. That would have just been fine, I think. Anyway. Then we have 2 Ragamuffins, so 2 colours on the black for a 2/2. Hellbent, sacrifice a creature or land, draw a card, play this ability, only have no cards in hand. So, I don't understand. So, okay, so you're Hellbent, you sacrifice a creature, and then you draw a card, and then you're not Hellbent anymore? I mean, I guess this is speeding up your draw, so then I guess the idea is you draw that card and then play that card and you're Hellbent again. But if you can't, say it's like a land and you've already done your land drop for the turn, yeah, then you've just switched off all your Hellbent cards, I suppose. Yeah, kind of a weird card to include, really, given the design of Hellbent. I've said Hellbent so much now, it's kind of like lost all meaning. And then a single Slaughterhouse Bouncer, 5 mana for a 3/3, so just super expensive. When Slaughterhouse Bouncer dies, if you had no cards in hand, a creature gets -3/-3 to turn 10. So, like, it's a lot of hoops to jump through. You have to get, like, firstly, you're paying 5 mana for a 3/3 that has no other abilities. And then when it dies, you have to make sure you have no cards in hand, and then you get to essentially do Last Gasp, which, I mean, I feel like you could just have a 3/3 and Last Gasp and achieve, get better results, basically. And then we have two Slithering Shades. So another Hellbent card. So this one is kind of all right, I suppose, because one black mana for a 0/1 defender. I said it's okay, and then proceed to say complete trash stats. It has a Shade ability, which is okay on a creature this cheap. Normally, Shade abilities kind of ups the cost of a creature by sort of 1 or 2. And if when you're Hellbent, it can attack as if it didn't have defender. So yeah. But again, so many hoops to jump through to get to that point. Because the thing is, like, I mean, it sounds like, oh, just have no cards in your hand, but like, I don't know. Say if you have, I know, 3 land in hand, that's like a minimum of, say, you have your opening hand and you got 3 land in there. That's a minimum of 3 turns before you can be Hellbent, because obviously you can get like 1 land drop a turn. I don't know. It just Rakdos should be like the fast, like very fast, aggressive deck, and you have to spend so much time kind of setting yourself up into a not great gameplay situation, which is having no cards in hand, just to make your cards somewhat okay. Kind of reminds me of the Slither deck all the way back in Prophecy, where it's just like you have to jump through so many hoops. In that case, it was making sure all your lands were tapped to make your cards kind of okay. Anyway, yeah, as you can tell, I'm not a big fan of this deck really, or generally how Rakdos were designed in Dissension. Anyway, 2 Drekavac. So this can help you get Hellbent. So it's 2 mana for a 3/3, which is well costed, I suppose. When it comes to play, you have to sacrifice it unless you discard a non-creature card. So yeah, sure. Get a 3/3 down, but on second turn you have to discard a card, brings you close to Hellbent. Fine. Rakdos Guildmage, I think, is a better way of helping you get Hellbent. So, like all the Guildmages, 2 hybrid mana for a 2/2. Has 2 abilities. So its black ability helps you get Hellbent because it involves discarding a card. So 4 mana, discard a card. A creature gets -2/-2 turn. It essentially turns any card in your hand into a very, very expensive. Oh, what's a -2/-2? Disfigure is the one from Zendikar, I think. I mean, this is obviously not Zendikar, but that was the -2/-2. Yeah, but anyway, turns any card in your hand into a very expensive removal spell. And then 3 cards, 1 red, put a 2/1 red goblin creature token with haste into play, and then exile at end of turn. So that's okay that it makes kind of creature tokens that can immediately attack. That's okay, I suppose. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Definitely, I think it's in the top half of the guild mages, but it's near the middle line, And then one of the rares in the deck is Lysolda, the Blood Witch. So 1 card, 1 black, 1 red, 3/1. 2 sacrifice a creature. Lysolda, the Blood Witch, deals 2 damage to a creature or player if the sacrifice creature was red, and you draw a card if the sacrifice creature was black. So there is also a sacrifice theme in this deck, but also you don't have a lot of creatures. You don't it's 21, I think. So actually, notably fewer than most pre-constructed decks usually have at this time. Normally, they have sort of in the 24, 25 range. So I don't know, but then you've got enough cheap creatures, I guess, to sacrifice. Rakdos Guildmage makes a token, I guess. But again, it does this thing of okay, so it's doing. Okay, so it does damage. That's fine. You sneak the last bits of damage through, and draw a card if it was black. So again, it's kind of this anti-synergy where a lot of the cards in the deck want you to be Hellbent, but then this is drawing you cards and then switching off Hellbent. But then I guess it means this is kind of like a really roundabout way of making sure you still have cards in hand to actually play stuff rather than just dumping your entire hand. I don't know. It's the original Rakdos feel very conflicted in terms of like how they were designed. Rakdos Ixpitter, 1 card, 1 black, 1 red for a 1/1. Taps do 1 damage to target creature, and the creature's controller loses 1 life. This is okay, I think. This is, it's fine. Perfectly fine. Hits a creature and the creature's controller, fine. Can't affect the player if they don't have a creature to target. But that's such a niche situation. This is okay. It doesn't feel like a Rakdos card, really. When we look at like what Rakdos becomes later, like this feels like very weird just to have a kind of a slow, pingy creature. But as I say, as I've said with all these kind of guilds, on their first showing. It's like their awkward adolescent phase. And then when we get to Return to Ravnica, they're in their mid-20s. They've got their life sorted. They know what they're doing, you know. 2 statistic Augur Mage, so 3 mana for a 3/1. When it dies, each player puts a card from their hand on top of their library. So this is kind of, again, can help get hellbent, I suppose. It's alright. It's all like essentially time walks everyone. 2 Scorched Rusalkas, 1 red for a 1/1. 1 red sacrifice creature does 1 damage to target player. Again, it sort of plays into this weird sacrifice theme the deck is trying to do. And yeah, this is one of the better Rusalkas. But again, you've got so few creatures in the deck, really is. I mean, this is a way of sneaking through the last bits of damage. Anyway, it's fine. And then 2 Torpid Moloch. So 1 red mana for a 3/2 defender. But you can sacrifice 3 lands to make it lose defender until end of turn. Sacrificing 3 lands to attack with just a 3/2 that has no other abilities would be, I think, a bad choice. I mean, just imagine the game state you're in here. So, you know, you're playing this Rakdos deck, you've worked really hard to be hellbent, so all your cards are sort of slightly better, and then you want to attack with Torpid Moloch, like, I'm going to sacrifice my lands as well. Which goes against itself, because then if you're getting rid of your lands to attack with this, so then when you draw cards, you might not then have the mana to play them, which means you are then not hellbent. I have no idea why this card is sacrifice 3 lands. I don't know why it's not just sacrifice a land. I think that would be, I think that would still be bad, but it'd be a lot better than sacrificing 3. It's 3 lands just to attack with a 3/2 is just insane. Yeah, not a great card. Not a great card. I like the art though, but that doesn't really have any bearance on it at all. So then moving on to non-creature spells. So we have 2 Cackling Flame. So we have a Hellbent spell. So 4 mana. Does 3 damage to target creature or player, but if you're Hellbent, does 5 damage instead. So it is incredibly overcosted if you are not Hellbent. You know, for comparison, you have like Incinerate, which is 2 mana for 3 damage to anything, and with the extra bonus that anything hit by it can't regenerate. And Incinerate was around at the time, I think. But if you are Hellbent, then 5 damage, which is like okay, I suppose. Like 4 mana for 5 damage to anything is all right, I suppose. I mean, again, what's the comparison? Lava Axe, I suppose, which is sorcery speed and 5 mana for 5 damage to a player only. Yeah, it's okay, I suppose. But yeah, just super overcosted if you're not Hellbent. Which, yeah, just not wonderful, in my opinion. 2 Taste for Mayhem. This is a very basic aura. Gives an enchanted creature +2/+0, and if you're Hellbent, they get an additional +2/+0. So this is a card where like it's okay if you're not Hellbent. Just +2/+0 is obviously a very basic buff, but you know, for 1 mana, I suppose it's okay. But you know, by comparison, like Unholy Strength, which is +2/+1 for a single black mana. Yeah. And then Twin Strike, again, very expensive. 3 colors, 1 black, 1 red. Does 2 damage to each of 2 target creatures, but if you're Hellbent, you destroy them instead. So at least it's not like color locked. It can hit like non-black creatures, which is kind of still a restriction these spells have at this time. Like 5 mana to destroy 2 creatures is pretty good, but 5 mana to deal 2 damage to 2 creatures is not great. That's what I mean. There's such like they're like at extreme ends of the scale, these Hellbent cards. They're either very overcosted for quite weak effects, or they're actually pretty good for their effect, but the cost being you have to have no cards in hand. So the other area of the deck is, I'm so confused by this. So not the card, just why it's in here. Nihilistic Glee. So 2 cards, 2 black for an enchantment. 2 and a black, discard a card, an opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So that's a way of helping you get Hellbent, I suppose, by discarding cards. But then when you're Hellbent, you can pay 1 and 2 life to draw a card. And I don't know why it's in here, because it's a very slow, dirtly thing to do. So, you know, this does nothing the turn you play it, so it's 4 mana. And then, so next turn, okay, well, I'll discard a card and, like, you know, drain an opponent for 1. And maybe, you know, you do that a couple of times, and then you're Hellbent, and be like, oh, well, now I can't drain someone for 1. Like, well, I'll pay 1 and 2 life, because I've drained some life, to draw a card, and then I suppose I could do it again. It's just a very slow, dirtly, like, card. I don't feel the effect is that strong just to do just to drain for one. Like 3 mana and discarding a card just to drain someone for one is super weak in my opinion. And that hellbent the hellbent thing is not great either. I wonder if you could stack it, I suppose. Like put all the triggers on the stack. Like if you've got no cards to hand, say pay it like 3 times. Respond to the first activation with the other, and then essentially draw 3 cards for 6 life. I wonder if that's. I think that should be possible in the rules. Anyway, point is, it's just a very slow, dirtly card, and I don't know if it really fits with. I don't know with what the deck's trying to do. I don't know. It just feels really random, dropped in here. Anyway, so 2 Ignorant Bliss. Now this is what I feel. A mechanic like this. This is what like the whole Rakdos, kind of mechanic should have been built around, like cards like this. So Ignorant Bliss is 1 card and a red. You exile all your cards in your hand from the game. Exile from the game, you know what I mean. You exile them, and then end of turn they come back into your hand, and then you draw a card. So this is a way of getting Hellbent for a turn, and I just really wish there had been more cards like designed like this. So I don't know. It could have been, you could have had a creature like, oh, when you play it, you exile a card from your hand. If you have no cards in your hand, then it gets blah, 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 and then when this creature dies, you get the exiled card back into your hand. So you're not permanently losing stuff. You're just kind of temporarily getting stuff out of your hand, so you can switch on Hellbent, but then you're not losing that card. You do get it back. I don't know. I just feel like this card is the untapped potential for like what I think the Rakdos should have been in this first kind of outing for them. Anyway. Ignorance, I think, is pretty good, especially in this deck where you can temporarily. I really wish there'd been a full playset of this, but it's uncommon, which I don't think they don't usually do full playsets of uncommons. 3 Seal of Fire. This is actually a pretty clever reprint, actually, because sure, it's just kind of shock basically on enchantment. You just put it down and you can sacrifice time to do 2 damage to anything. The whole idea is you play it and then it's out. And then it's not in your hand, so then you've got fewer cards in hand. It's not like you're keeping shock then in your hand. You've got it out on the table. It's not in your hand, so makes it easy to get Hellbent. So actually, like a pretty smart reprint, I think, to represent Rakdos. And then a single Dowsing Gloom. Sure, it's just hits a creature for 2 and you gain 2. Sure. A single Wrecking Ball. So this is okay, I think. So 2 colors, 1 black, 1 red. For instant destroy target creature or land. It is instant speed land destruction, which is actually noteworthy. Wrecking Ball is alright. I kind of wish there'd been another one of this in the deck as well, honestly, just because it's actually a fairly solid card. Like it always has a target. And then 2 Rakdos Signet. Which is just a mana rock, which is fine, and then a single Rix Mardi Dungeon Palace, which is the guild hall. Taps to give you 1 colorless or 1 black, 1 red. Tap, each player discards a card. Activate anytime you play a sorcery. So again, it's another way of getting Hellbent. So this is one of the few decks that doesn't have the guild bounce land, which in this case is the Rakdos Carnarium, but it makes sense in here because that involves bouncing a land back to your hand. So it kind of I know I keep going back to this, but then you've had a card come back, so you've essentially delayed a turn of becoming Hellbent. Anyway, but as discussed, I don't think Hellbent is a great mechanic, and I think that's kind of the consensus of the community anyway. So what could have been? Like the card pool, honestly, for Rakdos is not wonderful in Dissension. But some possibilities here could have been Hellhole Rats, which is it's a 2/2 with haste. For 4, when it comes in, a player discards a card, and then they take damage equal to the discarded card's mana value, which is, I think, actually pretty good. Jagged Poppet is, I think it's a 3/4. I've covered up Parentalis because I'm super clever. For only 3 mana, so it's actually quite well costed. When it takes damage, you discard that many cards, but then when you're Hellbent, when it deals damage, your opponent discards that many cards. That could have been kind of fun, I suppose. Nettling Curse, just an aura. It goes on a creature, and whenever they attack or block, they lose 3 life, and you can pay red mana to make it attack that turn, which is fine, I suppose. And then Seal of Doom, it's like Seal of Fire, just comes down and it's Dark Banishing whenever you need it to be. It's fine. And then alternate rares, because like Lysolda, I think is okay, but the Nihilistic Glee, I think, is completely wrong for this deck. So I thought Anthem of Rakdos could be okay. So it's a expensive enchantment, but whenever creature control attacks, it gets +2/+0, and the Anthem of Rakdos does 1 damage to you. But if you are hellbent, sources you control deal double damage. So that's an effect that's worth becoming hellbent for. Avatar of Discord, I thought would be alright in this here. So 3 hybrid mana for a 5/3 flyer. When it comes to play, you have to sacrifice it unless you discard 2 cards. So like really good turn 3 drop here, and I think leans more into this kind of this very reckless play of just getting stuff down as quickly as possible, because like this Rakdos deck, it's meant to be black red, super aggressive, super quick, and it just doesn't feel that. There's a lot of durdling around with like sacrifice effects, I suppose, and it's just, I don't know. And then a single Demon Fire, which could have been a rare as well. So big X spell, does X damage to a creature or player. If it kills a creature, it gets exiled. If you're hellbent, it can't be countered and its damage can't be prevented, which is fine, I suppose. I still feel that's a bit weak for a rare. I think that could have been uncommon easily. Maybe cost an extra red. But anyway, as said, the card pool for Rakdos was not great because I don't think they were designed too well, honestly. So in summary, I don't like this one at all, like at all. I think Rakdos get a lot better in future Ravnica sets. But here it like with kind of Azorius, it just feels like they don't know what they want to do with Rakdos, because you've got some cards that are all about kind of like, okay, well, it's super efficiently costed and we'll discard a card and you get your super efficiently costed creature. But then we'll also try and make the opponent discard. We'll have like that kind of as a sub theme, but also we'll have like a sacrifice sub theme, I suppose. But then we also want you to draw cards, which then turns off your hellbent cards. It just feels like an absolute mess, in my opinion. So no, not impressed by this one at all. But that's just my opinion as I look at it on paper. I didn't actually own this deck, or if I did, I probably dismantled it almost immediately. But if you own this deck and like your experience was different, then please like put a comment below. I love hearing stories and opinions about these decks. I don't think Hellbent is that great. But if you are a Hellbent supporter, please tell me what I'm doing wrong with this. Like, please make me see the light, essentially. So that was Rakdos Bloodsport. So I'll be back next time to look at the last Dissension pre-constructed deck. But until then, thank you for watching, listening, and have a good day.